Education, Training, and Youth Development Committee meeting today. Well, first, before, I know we don't have legislation, but could you just call the roll?
Santana,
Present.
House Jones, Ray, Jones, Sly, Spencer, Star.
Thank you. And we do have a member that's not from Workforce, but we are excited to have him here is Councilman Harsh. So today, we are going to start a presentation from the Office of the Civil Service Commission. This is the first time that they actually present to Workforce, so pretty excited to have him here. If you guys could come up. Good afternoon. Director, I've been seeing you quite often this week. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So, can you just introduce yourself just for TV 20 and you I haven't had a chance to actually meet. So if and maybe your role, if you could share that with us.
Madam Chair, my name is Rashawn Long. I'm the Director of the Civil Service Commission. And with me, I have Lila Abrams Fitzpatrick. She's our Business and Operations Manager, and then Director Cole of Human Resources.
Okay. I do want to add that every council member should have a Cleveland Advantage annually budget report in front of them. And once again, this is an operational review hearing, so just, talking about positions and so forth. But, so if you don't have one, let me know. Okay, go ahead. Proceed. Is it not working? Alan? Do we have problems with the remote?
I might just be technologically disadvantaged.
No, we got to add that to the budget. We do have the presentations on our tablet.
Oh, okay.
While he figures it out. Is it working?
It was working this morning, I don't know.
Uh,
There we go.
That's why we love Brooke. Okay, go ahead.
All right.
Director,
Madam Chair,
yes, sir.
to the council members, the first slide here represents our commission board members. We have 5 members. We actually did invite them, but I don't see any of them present. But they were extending an invitation. So that would be Pastor Gregory Jordan. He's the president. Michael Flickinger is our vice president. India Pierce-Lee is the secretary. And then we have 2 commission board members. Next represents our team, our civil service team. Some of my team members are present. If they could please introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. Leanne Newman, I'm the executive assistant to the director.
Okay.
I am Shanine Scott Chapman, I'm assistant administrator.
I'm Tamika Johnson Turner, and I am the examiner.
Tina Harris, and I'm a project coordinator.
Got it, okay.
Okay. So when I was appointed to this position, we actually had 3 full-time staff members. One was fairly new, and then the other 2 were on a leave of absence. So I am happy to say that we are fully staffed. We have 10 full-time staff members, and I believe this is probably, at least during my tenure, that we've been fully staffed.
Okay.
So I wanted to, I know that many of you have seen me, but probably don't really know anything about me, so just a little bit of background. October 10th was my 29th year with the City of Cleveland. I've been with the city a very long time. I actually started with the City of Cleveland as a co-op in high school. I was a timekeeper out at Harvard Yards some years ago. I went to explore the world and came back. I came back as a paralegal in the law department. I worked for about 10 years in public safety administration. I've worked for about 10 years collectively in public utilities. And I also worked in the Department of Human Resources prior to being assigned to civil service. My background and area of expertise is human resources. I am familiar with civil service, but some of this is a learning curve for me as well.
Thank you, Director.
Okay, so the next slide represents our application process. It's pretty straightforward. We post bulletins on the City of Cleveland website. The applicants apply. The departments are able to review the applicants. We refer them. Everything is electronic now. And then when the departments receive the names, then, they interview, extend offers, and then we begin our hiring process.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
What happened to the secretary position?
Director?
Madam Chair, to Councilman Polinsky, that transpired before my appointment. I can't answer how the roles were switched. I don't know. That was prior to my being assigned
Because to my
civil service.
knowledge, that is in the charter,
Understood.
the secretary position.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, I'm just trying to understand this through the chair, my colleague. There is no secretary of the Civil Service Commission at this time.
No. The secretary is now a part of the commission board.
Commission board.
Yes, that would be India Pearsley.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it's something, I would say, I don't want to belabor the point, I think that's something we need to explore and look at, because the charter is clear, and I've always believed in maintaining and upholding the charter. So I'll leave it at that point. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman.
All right, so the next slide represents our output metrics for the last 3 years. Total number of job bulletins, job postings, test bulletins, applicants, and hires. And that's overall citywide. The second breaks down our public safety applications for police, fire, and EMS. I want to bring up that we have began leaving the patrol officer postings up as an ongoing posting because we've had so many issues with recruitment. The numbers are very low. We've even, in an effort to recruit more people, left the postings up as an ongoing posting. We've also made some procedural changes. For instance, instead of requiring the driver's license and high school diploma to be presented up front, we've put that in another phase of the process just to give people an opportunity to apply before just outright rejecting them, if they don't have these documents.
Director, on that point, also, it is my understanding that the application has to be returned in person rather than mail? Or no?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
This slide just represents the demographics of our applicant pool. The workforce summary for 2023 indicates that our active employees are slightly lower than the previous year. We have actually hired two recruiters. We've extended offers to recruiters, I should say, to help us, recruit candidates. I don't know where they are, but we're not getting them. Even we go through our process and we are testing and establishing eligibility lists. Like by the time we test, we're only getting handfuls of candidates, and that is especially true with the police officers. We have been flexible in scheduling the tests, like even staggering the days or the hours. We make them on the weekends, we make them in the evenings, we do what we can to be flexible, but we're just not getting the applicant pool. And a part of it is that people really just don't want to come to work in person. They're looking for remote work opportunities. That's a huge part of it. So we are hoping. We have two recruiters. One is going to be housed in civil service, and the other is going to be housed in human resources. So we're hoping with the hire of these recruiters that, they can find, different venues to attract candidates.
Director?
Chairwoman, if I could, one of the two recruiters we made an offer to is also bilingual, which we're hoping will also help us with recruiting.
Thank you.
So some of the highlights for civil service, one was the recruiters. I think that this will add a lot of value. Again, we're human resource professionals. We're not recruiters, so hopefully with a different branding, maybe, we can attract additional candidates that way. Civil service
You have
has
a point?
developed. Yes?
No, I'll wait for the
Okay.
question. Thank you.
Civil service has developed a SharePoint site, which is going to allow for us to have all our data in one place instead of one piece here and one piece there, and then trying to collectively put together the data. So that will allow us to run more accurate metrics and analytics. We recently completed the duty statement, so we actually have 865 active classifications. So what we are going to do is begin to meet with the departments to, one, see if these classifications are even up to date. Like, for instance, one that sticks out in my mind, we had like a data control clerk, and that description talks about, magnetic strips and time cards. Like, it's very outdated, but we have people in these classifications. So the first step would be to make sure that the classifications are up to date, or if they're even needed. Like, some of them can probably be abolished. So we're going to start going from department to department to begin to review this information. We are looking at modernization of our testing and exams. Like, some of these things can be done, electronically. Some of the tests probably need to just be, revamped altogether. So that is another initiative. And lastly, working in collaboration with human resources. Many of the initiatives and goals that we have are in collaboration with human resources. We have the same common goal. A lot of our functions overlap and they interface. So Director Cole and I have to be partners in our goals and objectives. One of the biggest initiatives that Director is working on is the centralization of the hiring process. I'm sure you all know or probably receive complaints that one department does one thing here, the other department is doing something totally different, and we can't track it because everyone is kind of, working as silos doing their own thing. So that is going to be a huge push. We are also working on a revised orientation and onboarding program. And most importantly, a new human capital management system. So all of our resources will be in one management system instead of three. We have NeoGov, we have ADP, we have Kronos. Some departments are probably using their own, human resources management system, and they don't necessarily talk to each other. And if they do, they don't interface well. So, for instance, if you were to ask me for a vacancy report, I mean, that's not something, I probably could put one together, but I couldn't guarantee the accuracy. One, because NeoGov only, the way it would sort would be approved positions, not necessarily budgeted and approved positions. And then if the leads aren't going in and closing out the requisition, we don't know if it's filled or not. So it's a cumbersome system. So looking forward to that. So that is an overview of the duties. I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Yeah, thank you, Director. And I know Director Combe and I met, and we talked about that same issue you were talking about, NeoGov, and how complex it is. Can you share with the council members what you shared with me about cleaning up the database, what your plan is in place to kind of streamline the process to make it easier for residents or for people to apply?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman and council members. So we are going to be taking kind of a multifaceted approach. One of the steps we'll be taking is Director Long is going to be going into NeoGov and cleaning out all of the old data that was includes the old postings that date back several years, and then doing a refresh. And that's going to occur the week of December the 4th, I think, to be completed by the 8th of December. Excuse me. What that is going to do is require, the refresh will require departments to look at all of their positions, ensure that all of the process has been taken through from the PR to the posting, and making sure that the appropriate postings are up. So that'll be one of the big pieces right from the get-go. Also, as Director Long had mentioned, the duty statement, which has the 865 classifications, we're going to be working with the departments to go through those to determine what in fact belongs, what could be gotten rid of, what has to be updated, all of those things, because that hasn't been done in a very, very long time, which will help really with all of our work moving forward. We are going to be working on the appearance of job postings and bulletins, making them more of a refreshed and updated, with a refreshed and updated appearance, something that's more easily navigatable. And really, in terms of the whole process, as Director Long mentioned, looking at really from pre-board all the way through and including onboarding. So the whole process is going to really be centralized, consistent, and equally applied across all of our city departments, so that there are no subcultures that are going to exist.
Thank you, Director. And so I'm going to put myself out there. I don't understand how every department works and what are their responsibilities. Is there any way that you could break that down from like human resources, civil service, the commission? Like, what is the role of a commission under civil service? That would be very helpful to me.
So the Civil Service Commission pretty much approves our bulletins. They give us permission to post our bulletins. They approve our eligibility list. So once we post the bulletins and people apply and we go through the test and all of that, we compile a list of the rejections, those who, passed the test. And the commission actually reviews those documents and approves them. They approve the hires. Like all of these things are presented at the commission meetings, like hires, leaves of absence, the bulletins, the tests, fit for duty requests, reinstatements, and am I leaving something out?
When you want to request work, a change in the classifications
Oh,
or
check,
adding.
right. Requests for new classifications, requests to amend classifications. All of those have to be approved through the commission.
Commission, okay.
Yes.
When did the commission come on board? Has it always been
As,
the way?
since I've
the
been
way-
here, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. And then you work under Human Resources or with Human Resources to oversee all those positions, right? Director, do we know how many open positions we have as of now? Vacant positions?
We don't have a specific count. As Director Long mentioned, the challenge is we could pull a set of data in terms of maybe what were posted and not filled based out of NeoGov. That number would likely be different than what was budgeted. So we could look at it some different ways, but really attempt to pull whatever specific data you would prefer.
Got it. And then I want to go back to slide the applicant demographics. Do we know out of all the ethnicities that applied, how many were hired?
We can probably get that.
Okay.
We can provide that for you.
Okay. Brooke, I would be very interested in that information.
But
And
you
then
want
as,
higher,
yeah.
the chair, by demographics?
Yes. And I'm also curious to know, I know you said rejected, I mean, many of the applications were like rejected. Do you guys keep track of why are you guys rejecting some applicants for? Do you have that data?
But it would be by, by classification for each examination, so you would have to give me something specific, like to pull it all would be,
Okay, it'll be too much.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, I know as a council person, I get tons of calls saying I applied, right? Or I never got a call back, or we don't know if not receiving a call back means it was rejected. Are they notified? I don't know what that process is, but I would be curious to know, is it, they didn't have the qualification? Was it because they didn't have, education or, like, why aren't they?
So that kind of goes on the department. Want me to speak?
Yeah.
So, through the chair, the department, once we refer the applications over to the departments handles the hires from there. So they do the interviews. They are the ones that should be sending out the notifications on who they reject, the reasons why they reject, and so on. So they do the interview process, the offer process, and the hiring process. All of that is held at each department level.
Okay.
So once we refer those applications, it kind of comes out of the hands of civil service and HR, and we kind of lean on the departments to be responsible for that.
Got it, okay. So if I get someone that has never received a response, Director, you know about this, what could I assume? That maybe you guys didn't receive the application? What is the message that I am sharing with them? Call back or?
Yeah, a lot of times they'll call, and we just refer them to the departments, because we do refer all applications to the departments other than things that we're testing for. So when we're doing civil service examinations and have bulletins out, that's a different process, and there's a different way of, vetting those people. So those people may not meet the qualifications based on the information they provided, or if they did not provide enough information. So the civil service exam process is totally different from the actual more non-competitive positions where they're hiring. That kind of falls on the department. So if the department is not doing their due diligence and reaching out and letting the candidates know where they are in the process, it's just something that we got to work with the departments on to make sure they're pushing that information out.
Got it, okay. Thank you for that. And then my last question, I'm going to open it up to my council colleagues. One of the things I really want to push during this budget hearing is extra, I don't know if that's credit, I don't know if it's points, I don't know if it's like additional pay rate of bilingual staff. Oftentimes, and not only Spanish, just if you speak another language, you're interpreting, you're translating, and there's no extra incentive for that task, right? And so I'm curious to know, and even with police, right? We have a lot of policemen are doing interpreting within their district, and so I know a lot of our families are waiting for the police to show up so they could interpret. And I know you guys that sometimes do the language line, but it's something that I really would want to look into to see if that's something that's possible. I know other states have done it. I don't know what that looks like, to be honest. I'm sure we could look at other states that are doing it, Director, but I do want to add that to your list because it's something that we've been talking about for quite some time, especially with policemen. They're out there interpreting consistently, with families. So, okay, and so now, first up, I want to turn it to my Vice Chair, Councilwoman House Jones, and
Thank you. And you might have covered this already through the chair to the director's Italian team. How many are on your staff, and are there any vacancies on your team?
Through Madam Chair to Councilwoman, there are 10 staff members, and I do not have any vacancies, with the exception of the recruiter, which we have just filled.
Oh, okay. 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 And through the chair to the director, so I'm trying to get just a better clarification on, is civil service actually still needed? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, is this a process that's actually still needed? I think in our charter, the last creation, or on the records, last time something was touched base, it was like 1967. It's 2023. Right, I don't know, I think these are like real conversations as policymakers we really need to have, like, what is the relevancy of civil service here in 2023 and beyond?
Through the chair to Councilwoman, the purpose of civil service is to ensure that the hiring and promotion of classified and/or competitive positions are done equitably and fairly. We are in the process of looking at civil service departments in different cities to see how they are ran, because we realize our process it's long and it's cumbersome. So we are doing that research.
Right, so thank you, through the chair to the director, thank you for just highlighting the purpose being that it is to help with equitable hiring as well as promotions. With that being stated, how do we even evaluate that process? It's like, how will we grade ourselves? Are we hiring people equitably? Are we promoting people equitably? Can we actually definitively answer that question today?
Through the chair to Councilwoman, no, we can't. And that would be a part of our collaboration as far as centralizing our hiring processes. That is a part of that.
So I thank you for that. So in answering that question, this goes back to, and this is one of the things where, in lawmaking, I always say, like, the commitment to past practices that are not serving us today, what are we doing it for, right? And this is to this council body. If something was created for whatever purpose, and today we can't even evaluate the purpose, like, what are we doing? I think we really need to invest some time, and not even thinking about in 2023, but what will be on the horizons for the next generation, and how do we evolve to actually meet the needs. I think that's part of the reason why we cannot attract many of we want, candidates and things of that nature, but we can't attract them because we just have not grown, in a place. And I guess two more questions before I finish. Through the chair to the director, what does it look like, and I guess a part of the evaluation, of creating opportunities for remote workers, right? So like remote work, hybrid work, things of that nature, and even evaluating the job descriptions of what actually is needed for a person to be here or elsewhere. Like, do we have some type of analysis? And I guess that's for both you, directors.
Through the chair to Councilwoman, again, that is something that we are about to begin going through the departments to understand what is needed, what is not. I mean, the positions they're dated. Particularly the IT positions are very dated. I mean, they don't work. So I would say that we are looking at those that are a priority first, and then, as I said, working with the departments. As far as a remote work policy, I would leave that to Director Cole. I don't know where we are with that process, or if it's in motion yet.
Through the chair to Councilwoman House Jones, we do have a draft of a remote work policy, a hybrid remote work policy. We have not moved forward on it. We are at least currently concentrating on trying to get some, I would consider higher priority policies wrapped up and through, along with the applicable procedures, again, to really try to stabilize and make a consistent practice of policy and procedure across the city. It is one thing, though, that is still currently being considered, particularly as it relates to the younger generations who are job hunting, where remote work is a very important thing to them. So it's definitely not lost. It's still there. We just have not moved on anything as of yet. It's going to require a little bit more involvement with the departments to look at their positions and operations, and then probably come back with a plan before we issue something out. Just based on the positions that could do it, do we have the infrastructure for it? Those kinds of things. Being a little bit of a newbie, as you all know, I'm still looking into how some of the operations work in the other departments, and how a policy like remote work or a hybrid policy would affect. But certainly something that's still on the board.
And, okay, I guess my final question, through the chair to the directors, Director, how long does it take someone to go through this? And I know that's a loaded question, but how long does it take someone to get through civil service in general, on the average?
For competitive positions, so let's use like a pipe repair worker.
Yeah.
Probably 60 days, would you say? Approximately.
Okay. And then for the exploratory phases, you're here, you're new, you're, the collection of teams of civil service and HR are looking at putting the plan together, doing some evaluation. How long will that take you all before we can actually get into what changes will be needed? What time frame have you all given yourselves collectively regarding the evaluation process to then put forth some much needed upgrades to our overall hiring in the city of Cleveland?
Through the chair to Councilwoman House Jones, we actually are evaluating currently. We are going to also be working with Ernst Young, our strategic partner, on the process itself. It's actually going to be something that we are partnering with them, is making it a kind of a first sprint strategic, they call it a sprint, strategic process streamlining. In terms of time frame, I would say fairly quickly. I don't have an exact time frame, but I know we're looking at it currently and addressing it right now. We've already started to map out from our end drafts, and we'll be working with them. I'm not entirely sure of the next meeting, but it's within the next week or so to really start, fully mapping it out. So I would say it's the first initiative in terms of a process that we're hitting.
Okay, to the chair, so for clarification, we are mapping out a process that will get us to evaluation, then to have a timeline.
No, through the chair to Councilwoman. No, I'm sorry. The evaluation is ongoing. It's happening concurrently.
Okay.
So the mapping out will be the process itself in terms of the hiring process. So pre-boarding all the way through onboarding, which will include the hiring process itself. So everything from the moment a position requisition is created and a position is posted, and then goes through the posting process, the candidacy process, selection process, orientation and onboarding. So it's going to be really the whole front end.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. So that reminded me of a question, this question right now. I mean, I grew up in a time where you would just walk in the office and the job description was on a bulletin, and many of our residents have access to city jobs. I'm just curious to know, and at that time, they didn't require college degree. Do you notice that through the new postings that are being posted, do you need college degree now? Is that a barrier, something that we're looking at? And maybe so many of these positions don't need college, and maybe they just need high school diploma. I'm just curious to know, how did that change from back in the days till now?
Through to Madam Chair, many of our positions have a substitution clause where you can have experience versus a college education. Also, we created an entry-level position, which was the project specialist. That is a very entry-level position that, really just requires a high school diploma.
Okay.
To try to capture, that applicant pool as well.
Got it, okay. So that's something that you won't see as a challenge now, why we're not hiring as quick as we did back then. Okay, thank you. The next on my list, I have Councilman Polenzek.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairperson and my honorable colleagues. And I want to thank you, Madam Chairperson, for inviting me to come today, because I'm not a member of this committee, but obviously we've been very concerned about hiring practices within the Division of Police and EMS. But let me just state this from a historical perspective. Civil service was set up, as the director indicated, to protect the hiring process, and so that people would not be discriminated against because of race, color, creed, ethnic origin, political affiliation, etc. And then obviously we used to, in the day we didn't have a human resource department. We used to be the Department of Personnel Department. So both sections are very important. And then again, based on a charter, that's why I would ask, the charter specifies the Secretary of the Civil Service Commission is in charge of civil service. So that's why I need to get some clarification. It has no reflection on a director at all, who's a very competent person. But we need to make sure that the charter is being adhered to. But just to give you, again, some additional historical perspective, when Carl Stokes came back to Cleveland and became a judge, I would go over and talk to him. Because, I heard so much about him when I was a young man, and my mother made me, in '67, pass out literature for him, because my mother was one of the Eastern European ladies that was working and helping in his campaign. So when I was passing out literature for him as a kid, I didn't even know who Carl Stokes was, okay? Mom said, pass this stuff out, and I passed it on. I remember exactly what 4 streets I passed the literature out on for Carl Stokes. And I reminded him of that, which he got a thrill out of. But he explained to me, he said something to me was very important, that when he became mayor, he looked at the whole operation of civil service, hiring personnel, and what he determined is that it's not that the jobs weren't there for minorities and people of color, et cetera, but the community was not made aware of the jobs. They were not being made aware of the jobs. Therefore, he looked at what then a mayor in the day by the name of Frank Lausche did, because when Lausche came in, he found the same thing, that people of Eastern European descent were not being hired in the city of Cleveland. So he did what he could to expand that into the ethnic community. So then Mayor Stokes embarked upon a plan to get the word out into the community that these are the jobs that are available, you need to apply. So if you go back, you'll start to see a shift, how people of color started to obtain jobs within the city of Cleveland in the 60s and then going forward. So what I want to say again is civil service is important. And so, but for the people watching this at home, what I need to get a better understanding, and I think sometimes we don't realize that there are people watching this who don't understand the process. When a job is posted with the city, you're notified. Who notifies civil service that there's a vacancy? Is it human resources now, or it is the division or department?
Through the chair to Councilman Polinsik, the departments, what happens is the departments complete a requisition for a vacancy. It's electronic, so actually Lila gets those. So we get notification, it goes through an electronic approval process, and then once that is all done, if it is a competitive
Yes.
classification, then we certify an eligibility list, and if it is a non-competitive classification, then we go through a posting process, and then the department receives the applicants.
But most of the positions are competitive, correct, with the city?
Through the chair, that
They're
is
civil
correct.
service.
Yes.
So the department notifies you that they're, let's just say waste collector for sake of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
There's a position opening in waste collection.
Mm-hmm.
You're notified. You post that. You post that electronically, and you put it on the board out in the hallway, correct?
Through the chair to Councilman, the board is gone.
Oh, it is gone.
It's gone.
Why is that?
It's everything is electronic now.
Okay, what about the people who do not? And I continue to raise this. What about the people who don't utilize a computer, don't have access?
Through the chair to council, they can actually come into the civil service office. We have a kiosk there. We are happy to assist people to complete applications. We do provide a paper, if someone wants us to print the bulletins for them, we can do that. And then through the chair to Councilman Polinsik, we've also been looking at, we have requested testing space. So if we need, to have, say, 20 people come in, or if we want to give blocks of time for people to come in who need help, we are happy to do that.
But what about the person, again, who doesn't have the computer, the laptop, who traditionally would come down here, and I would say, go down to the first floor. They'd come up here to ask to see me. Go down to the first floor and look at jobs are posted. How do they even know the job is posted if it's not on the board?
Through the chair to Councilman, they can still come into the civil service office. Or they can just come into the office. It's not on the board. Like, the board is literally gone, but they can come, just walk into the office.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to provide accessibility. Because again, I raise that at every meeting. I raised it yesterday. Not everybody's going online here. I look at my phone calls. I'd say a third of the people that call me don't have email. They're not on a laptop. They're not on a computer. They're still doing it the quote-unquote old-fashioned way, and that's the reality. And I recognize that, and I go out of my way to help those folks, okay? And I want to make sure we're doing the same, that someone who does not have that affordability or doesn't have that skill isn't denied access to see what jobs that are posted.
Through the chair to councilman, they can come into
Okay.
the civil service
Okay.
office or human resources.
Okay, so then let me ask some other pertinent questions. I'm going to go as fast as I can. And again, I thank the chairperson. Why would on your budget to date, why would you be 161% over in parking facilities, in parking cost?
That would, the only thing, through the chair to councilman, that would probably be parking validations for testing. So when people come in to test, we validate their parking.
Okay, then you need, at budget time, you're going to need to come in and adjust that better reflect if you're having people coming in, and you obviously have an idea how many people are coming in, then your budget needs to reflect that.
Through the
So-
chair to council, understood.
Okay. Then the other question I have, because we had been led to believe that people were not applying for police. But if these numbers are correct, you've had, in 2021, 1,497 apply. 2022, 973. And so far this year, 825. Yet, as we all know, very, very few people are being hired within the division of police. Same holds true for EMS, but it's more reflective in police. So when you post a position for police officer, what background checks do you do? What does civil service do to that applicant? That's what I think people want to understand.
Through the chair to Councilman Polinsik, as I previously stated, so anyone that applies to be a
Yes.
patrol officer, we send them a voucher so that they can test.
Yes.
The Division of Police actually performs the background checks. That does not come through civil service. I know they do I think they call it a personal history check.
Okay.
I think they check their work references, they check personal references. I think they do
Okay.
a
So then,
sweep.
and we're going to have further discussion, but I just want to make that clear to the viewing public. Civil service does none of that background check.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, that falls squarely on the division of police for police officers, and it would for EMS as well,
Through the chair to council. that
and
is
for
correct.
fire.
Correct.
Okay. So if someone was knocked out who took a police exam and was not, and could not complete their process because they came down with COVID, it would be up to the police, division of police, to look again, to go back and look at that applicant, correct?
Through the chair to councilman, that is correct, but they are welcome to reapply.
Okay, so, because I could not understand, there were people that were knocked out of COVID because they had COVID, which was, we all know how many people came down, but then they were just passed over, which I just could not understand why these people were not given a second chance. Okay? In light of the situation we're having in the division of police. So, again, I just want to say to my colleagues here, civil service, and I commend my colleague, Councilwoman House Jones, because she raised some interesting points here as it pertains to deep diving as to how things are actually working. And I say this, and I've always believed in transparency here. And I think it's up to the council to really take a look at human resources and civil service. I'm going to give you just a case in point. We did at one time we had the 1 in 3, as you're aware. And maybe you need to explain that to the viewing public. Then we expanded it to the 1 in 10. And we thought by doing that, we would have an opportunity to hire more people of color, minorities, women, folks from the Asian community, you name it. We thought by broadening that pool that we would have better success in doing that. And yet it hasn't worked. It hasn't happened. So educate me if you can, or to the viewing public. We used to be able, well, you explain it how it worked, how it once worked and how it works now. The 1 in 3 and now the 1 in 10.
Through the chair to council members. So the 1 in 3 rule was that for every vacancy, if we were certifying an eligibility list, for every one vacancy, you would be provided 3 candidates. And out of those 3 candidates, you had to select one.
Get a little bit closer to the mic so
Oh, I'm
folks can
sorry.
hear it. Thank you.
Some years ago, it was changed to 1 in 10. So for every one vacancy, you get, 10 names. And, through those 10 names, it gives you a little bit more variety than 3 people. So you would have to choose 1 qualified person out of 10.
Okay. Is there anything to stop you from going back and taking another person out of the group of 10?
Through the chair, no, there isn't.
Okay. There you go. There you go. You hit that one right on the mark. You talk about hitting a home run, you just hit it. You just hit it. I cannot understand why we are not hiring more people for the division of police. We expanded the pool. Cleveland City Council and our citizens, because this was voted on by the citizens, we expanded the pool so we could hire more people, especially Cleveland residents. And it's not happening. And we've got to figure out how we're going to get to the bottom, why it isn't happening. And I'm going to give you just a case in point, and then I'm going to leave it at that. And that's why this is something, again, based on Stephanie's comments and others, why we have to deep dive more. My son, 2 years ago, took a civil service test. Lives in the city of Cleveland, graduate of CMSD schools. Came in second on the civil service test and was passed over. And one thing, he was passed over. So had the first person that placed first, had that person been picked, fine. But I found they went down in the list over him, and he had the job that he applied for, he had already worked in that profession and was passed over. But I know why he was passed over, because of his last name. Okay? That's why he was passed over, because he was related to me. And it has bothered me ever since, because I've always told people that I know, or family members, I don't pull any strings down there, never have, never would. You want to work for the city, you apply, you take a civil service test, you apply like everybody else. That kid did what he was told to do, and he was passed over because of his last name, and I am never going to forget it. I'm never going to forget it. So it goes back to what Carl Stokes said to me. Civil service was to protect people and Cleveland residents from political, racial, religious discrimination. Okay, and we got to be assured, all of us on this side of the table, we got to make sure that that's not happening here. So we expanded to 1 in 10. It's not working. And all of us, again, I thank the committee here for really starting this. I mean, this is, I think, this is really the first time I can remember that we really got into civil service and hiring. And we need to do that. We need to make sure that this is fair. And then, because I say that, because then I looked around at all the people who had all their relatives working here in the past, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, how did they all get hired? How did they all get hired through the civil service process? when I could go down, I'm not even going to mention the names, but I couldn't believe all the people who had their family working here. And wait a minute, something ain't right here. Something ain't right here. Different strokes for different folks. And that's not right. So I'm going to leave it at that, Madam Chairperson. This is something we need to look at, not only now, but in the future. But we're going to really deep dive on it on public safety, because I cannot for the life of me understand when the city of Euclid can fill every open position in division of police, and we cannot fill our positions. And we're told out of 800 and some people, we wind up with 11 or 10. Just doesn't make any sense to me. Something is terribly wrong with the process. Thank you, Madam Chairperson, and my
Thank you,
colleagues.
Councilman. And just going back to your line of question, so if they get passed over, do they have to take the test the following year again? If they want to reapply?
Madam Chair, the eligibility list is good for 2 years.
Oh, 2 years, okay. And just considering that you can go back, why isn't that happening? No,
Madam Chair, I can't answer that question
Okay.
without more information.
thank you. Next up, I have Councilman Slife.
Thank you. And to my understanding of your question, because and this is just my understanding of it, is that individuals who are passed over remain on the eligibility list. However, they may not be certified to future lists for selection. So like they almost have like a dud status. So I hear a lot from people like, why was I like, arguably, unless a hiring authority exercises their discretion to change someone's status from passed over to eligible again so they can be certified from the list and considered for a future round of hiring until the list expires, being passed over is effectively being eliminated from the list.
Got
So
it.
like,
Okay.
we hear a lot, we get asked like, am I still on the list? And the answer is yes, and then people ask why I'm not being considered. So you don't have to, but that's, I guess, that kind of is a segue into, thank you for being here, and obviously I've had a working relationship with you, so congratulations on your new role. I do think a lot of the confusion that we get, especially from residents and as we're trying to unpack, is sort of that handoff moment and what the hiring process is beyond civil service and kind of a confusion as to the degrees to which civil service is like still engaged. What I've heard, so is it correct, I guess, that historically civil service was established, so like a politician, I can't just like get jobs to my cousins, right? It's supposed to be a way, I know that's a kind of a broad generalization, but it's meant that there's kind of a fair, unbiased process. I guess I won't make you answer this, but my understanding after so many years of this is essentially that there is a fair qualitative, or I'm sorry, a fair quantitative process through which people apply, people take a test, the test is graded, and everybody then passes the test. And if you pass the test, you are given a rank. And really focusing right now on public safety, because public safety is really the only circumstance I can think of where you're hiring people in like large batches, maybe some seasonals in public works and stuff, right? But then upon the certification of a list that is then hired, that a hiring authority, basically a department director, hires from, I think where people get confused is that the ranking is the order in which candidates are reviewed, but the ranking does not necessarily mean that you are hired. And the hiring is really at the discretion of the hiring authority. And I guess my response to that is it feels like, to the outside viewer who doesn't understand civil service, doesn't understand how this all works, like they get that there's a process in place so that Charlie Slife can't give jobs to his cousin because he's an elected official. But then someone says, but it seems like there is a process in place where as long as somebody gets on a list, a hiring authority, in their ability to choose, perhaps could insert their own biases into that hiring process, and it seems like a disconnect to people. That's my take on what I hear from people. I'm not saying anything nefarious is happening, but it's people like if you're number one or number two and they're hiring 30 people, they assume that you're going to be one of the two hired. It's not so simplistic as that.
On that point, Slife, just
Go ahead.
to add, so who is choosing these candidates? Is it the commission, or is it Director Howard and the mayor?
Through the chair to council with the appointing authority of the department.
Who is?
So in that case, it would be Director Howard for public safety. Public utilities would be Director Kane.
Okay.
Public Works Director Williams. It's the appointing authority for the department.
So a question is, during that selection process, is civil service present in any capacity, or is it simply that the certified list is sent and like civil services work with this part of the process? Is it a full carryover? Like, is it a one-way trip for like the applicant, or to what degree does civil service and the department kind of continue to engage in a two-way conversation from like very first application until like very final hiring?
Through the chair to Councilman Slife. So we do, both myself and Director Cole, once the appointing authority makes a determination on who they're going to hire, when we, before final approval, we do make sure, that they follow the eligibility correctly. So let's say, if we have one vacancy and we're doing one in 10, they can't go to number, 42. So we go back and look at that to make sure, they're following the process correctly, yes.
Okay, so suppose we're going to hire like 30 firefighters.
Mm-hmm.
From your explanation earlier, historically we would send over, I guess, 90 names because we had to have, for every one vacancy, we had to have 3 names, right? And now it would be the case where we're sending over 300 names because we need 10 candidates for every one vacancy. Theoretically, could the 30 candidates hired be ranked numbers 271 through 300? Could that be the seated class?
Through the chair to council, it's possible. I'll say
Okay.
that.
Which is, again, therein lies some of the confusion. And I will say just to my colleagues, I had expected, or I guess I had assumed, that civil service was seated in the room during a selection process, which I also thought was like analogous to like a Vietnam draft lottery where there's like a big room and a rolly bingo thing, and it's very, very public. And I think part of the confusion is this is a public process, but it's not publicized, essentially. And my assumption would have been like, let's suppose that Chris Harsh and I are both applying for the same job, and the minimum qualification is a high school diploma, and they're like, oh, like Chris has a doctorate, so like he's super qualified, and is like civil service in the room to be like, hey, that's a cool qualification, but the minimum qualification is like a high school degree. So like you can't, almost as like a parliamentarian, a way to referee it. But it's been my understanding that civil service isn't kind of physically present during the selection process as any kind of guardrail. Is that true?
Through the chair to Councilman Slife, that is correct. We are not present.
Do you know if other jurisdictions do that, or is that just a silly assumption that Charlie Slife made?
Through the chair to Councilman Slife, we are researching different civil service departments in different cities.
Okay. And this has been, everyone knows this has been an interest of mine because, thank you for providing the applicant numbers. I think one of our goals to the chair and the vice chair is like in all of our data asks, we almost need to understand there's like 900 people applied. How many people actually took the test? And how many people passed the test, and how many people, so like when it gets down from like 900 to 11, how did that whittle down to the point where certainly there probably weren't 900 candidates still in the running by the time in that case, the Division of Police is hiring off of the list, then they wouldn't even have 900 people in front of them because they only have, cadet class times 10. But trying to understand that pipeline, and especially the diversity and the residency of that pipeline, is I think something that we've talked about exploring more, because from data I've received, and we can talk about this more later, Madam Chair, but it seems that we have a shared goal of having this again focusing exclusively on public safety. Our public safety forces reflect the broad diversity of the city, and then we have an institutionalized goal of hiring residents, which we quantify in the testing process. Like we've stated that that's a goal that we want to quantify and give credit. But in the case of, I think, one fire class, it was 90% white and 87% non-resident. So I think we're trying to figure out where in this process can we be helping to meet our own expectations. And it seems like my hunch is that first stage, the applicant process, we're succeeding in kind of meeting the residency scope and the diversity scope that we seek to obtain at the end of the process. But somewhere along the line, something's happening, and I'm not saying it's anything that anyone's doing maliciously, but like clearly something is happening if we are hiring a 90% white class when the applicant pool at the beginning of the process wasn't a 90% white applicant pool, So I think this is a long way to say that I'm really appreciative of civil service being here, but I'm still a little unclear on kind of what that two-way street is between any department and civil service, so that our departments really viewing civil service as their own pipeline and collaborating back and forth to make sure that once that certified list comes, it's reflective of our ability to hire qualified employees, diverse employees, resident employees. I'm still a little unclear on all of that, which I think leads to what was Councilwoman House Jones's question of, are there ways to update this process that are more nimble, that allow us to meet some of those expectations? So I know that was kind of like a long diatribe. If you'd like to comment, you can, but this and to the point being that if there is a way to do this in a way that's going to meet the end goal, which currently is not done by civil service. So this isn't a criticism of civil service. Does civil service need additional headcount to be able to take on a more a larger role in this kind of soup to nuts hiring process?
Through the chair to Councilman Slife, I believe that between myself and Director Cole's efforts to centralize the hiring process, that will alleviate a lot of these issues. Because presently, a lot of the divisions operate differently. Safety operates differently from utilities. Utilities operates differently from port. But I believe once we lay out a streamlined process and, identify specifically what that is going to be, and, no one is allowed to deviate from that process, that will alleviate a lot of problems.
Go, Director Cole.
If I could add through the chair to Councilman Slife, keep it in mind too that different positions will have several steps in some cases that are different than other positions. So, for instance, for police or fire, you may have a large pool of initial candidates that are produced from the list that go through a series of tests or a background check, an interview, some other steps that other positions may not have, that also will reduce the overall number that comes out on the final end. But to Director Long's point, I do agree that once we get a true centralized hiring process that's across the city of Cleveland, it will bring things a lot more streamlined, and we would have a lot more stake in the game, so to speak, at that point too.
Sure. So, and thank you. And I Director Cole, you're newer. This has been kind of like a passion point of mine for a number of years, and I've been trying to unpack it just because I truly do want this body to be a partner in all of this, and you know, we in some ways perhaps have more of a connection with individuals and households, and how do we need to be getting information out to people. But to Councilman Polensik's point, and again, this is about the Division of Police, you know, the number of people who initially applied were like, oh, why is this a challenge? It seems like we shouldn't be challenged in getting police officers into roles to the degree we are, because there's this nearly 1,000 people express some level of interest. And you know, my analysis of some data are that, like, last year, 1 in 4 applicants were black residents of the city of Cleveland, but then none of them were hired. So we're trying to figure out, like, that is like that's a crisis moment, you know, and the answers that we've gotten are like, well, like, not everyone wants a job, and some people can't pass a drug test, and but when we're talking about 900 plus people got hired, who applied, and 11 were hired, I don't think all 889 people are, like, you know, doing hard drugs that, you know, like, that we're trying to unpack this and figure out a way to be helpful and productive, and I certainly think that that's my intent with all of this, and as it relates specifically to civil service, trying to understand as we work to centralize and I guess modernize is maybe a fair word, because this is an old institution. What we need to do to help achieve what is the shared goal, but also what you would all need as a headcount, resources, technology, all of that stuff to really be, you know, like, not just like have the team on the field, but like every hit's, you know, a home run. We're trying to make sure that you have all the resources you need to achieve the end goal. So I'll stop there, because I feel like I'm at the point, Councilwoman Santana, where I'm starting to ramble. But this is a shared interest of mine, and I sense that we're going to be focusing on it a lot more. I guess the big takeaway is if we could work with policy staff and maybe your office to figure out, like, what are all the various stages. Like, if we could come up with an agreed upon data pipeline that we're able to, like, track data through the process and figure out, like, you know, what's at phase 1, here's the number and the diversity. At phase 2, here's the number and the diversity. I think that would go a long way in helping us realize, you know, where do we need to be giving resources to civil service, where do we need to be focusing on the hiring process within individual departments, where do we perhaps have concerns about the hiring processes within departments, and that would be useful for us just as a way to know that this is not just two events. There's a series of events that there could be room for improvement throughout. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And believe it or not, your rambling was very helpful, because I was going to ask about, like, what type of financial resource do you need for the recruiting piece, but from what I gather, and maybe you don't want to answer this, but it seems like the problem, the challenge is not the recruiting process, is more of the civil process. Would you agree?
Madam Chair, I
And
think
to
it's a little
hiring
bit of
policemen?
both.
Okay. Okay, so next on my list, I have Councilman Harsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I am also just trying to learn and understand this process better so that I can better understand how to meet the needs of the city. So just a couple questions for my own clarity. The role of the commission, those 5 people, you said through the chair to Director Long that they review the bulletins?
Through the chair to Councilman, yes.
Okay. And is it through the chair, is that a language that they're checking for when they review bulletins? What are they looking for? Or, you know, explain to me a little bit what they do, like when they review a bulletin. What does that mean? I don't understand entirely.
Through the chair to council, it's the actual bulletin that we're going to post. I mean, I can't say on their behalf what specifically they're looking for. I can't say, I don't recall any bulletins being, not approved.
The bulletin says the city of Cleveland is hiring 25 park maintenance
Through the chair.
workers and 30 firefighters.
Correct.
And they review the language on that and approve or disapprove or alter it. Okay. And after that, through the chair, what else do they do? What are their other responsibilities?
Through the chair to councilman, they review the rejections from the examinations. They approve the eligibility list. Sometimes we have fit for duty, typically from police for patrol officers. So they hear those. They hear reinstatements.
I'm sorry, when you say they hear the fit for duty, does that mean if the police reject through the chair an application as being not fit, they would review to the board would review that application?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. Through the chair, the test itself is a fairly objective measure, correct? It's what, a multiple choice test or what is the test look like when somebody takes the civil service test?
Through the chair to councilman, there are a written exam, some are multiple choice, some are, fill in the blanks. There is a performance test. For instance, we actually have a performance test going on now for construction equipment operators.
Okay.
So there's a written and a performance component.
Okay.
And then we have tests that are based on resumes and experience evaluation.
Okay. So it's not the type of test that can be fully automated. You don't just go online and click answers to questions and then we just grade your scores. There's some writing involved. There's some in-person performance work and that goes into this as well.
Through the chair, that is correct. However, we are looking to have some of our testing electronic instead of doing the Scantron sheets.
Okay. And then through the chair to Director Long, what is the difference between a bulletin and a test bulletin, or is that just different language for the same thing? I see test bulletins on your citywide output metrics. What's a test bulletin?
Through the chair, those are two different things. The test is the test and the bulletin is the announcement.
The bulletin is the announcement that says we're hiring, and then the test bulletin, or that's not one term. Test bulletins are two separate things. That's tests and bulletins. There should be a comma in there.
Through the chair, yes.
Oh, okay. So then my next question is through the chair. Job postings, are those unique positions or classifications? So if we're hiring 200 police officers, is that 200 of the 537 job postings this year, or is that one of the 537 job postings?
Through the chair, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, when I'm looking at the output metrics on your presentation, I'm looking at 2023 number one job postings, the number's 537. Is that unique positions or is that job openings or unique positions? So if we're hiring a police officer, but we're hiring 200, is that 200 of those 537 are police officers, or one is 537 and there are just 536 other jobs that we're hiring for?
Through the chair to the councilman, that is a unique number. So it would be one post is per posting. This number represents per posting. So we've had a total of 537 postings throughout this year thus far. So police is one out of that 537.
Okay, so the other 536 are non-police jobs. There's one for firefighter, even if we're hiring 30. There's one for police, even if we're hiring 200.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And then through the chair, the next set of numbers, Department of Public Safety, you have police, fire, EMS, and then you've got the numbers there. Is that the number of people who passed civil service and were eligible to those departments to pool from, to recruit from? When I see 825 police, 722 fire, 361 EMS, are those the number of people who got past civil service and were eligible to be considered by those departments?
Through the chair to councilman, no, those are the number of people that applied. We're talking applications. Only.
Okay. And so through the chair then to director, so how many of those applications got past civil service and were available to those divisions for review and potential,
through the chair to
ball goes to
council,
their court?
I can have that prepared for you and submitted.
Okay, because my understanding was that of that 825 number, and that's about the number that I've heard, that 973 might have been from 2022, the one that I heard most about. Out of that, only about 115 people actually qualified after civil service was done, and that was the eligible candidate pool. It was actually down to like 115, because then they invited 17 and passed over 98, and that's where we get the 98 passovers. But through the chair, or to Ms. Saban, if we could figure out, I'd like to know what percentage of applicants are ruled out by the civil service process as just not eligible for that department or division. We can
Through
do
the chair
that?
to council, sure.
Okay. So then, and as Councilman Slife said, the applicant demographics look really pretty reflective of the city. 50%, 57% black, 27% white, 5% Latino seems a little bit low, but those seem roughly ballpark average for applicants. My question through the chair to the director, are these applicants unique? I'm sorry, are these applications or unique applicants? So if I apply to be a cop, a firefighter, an EMS, and a sanitation worker, am I in here 4 times as like 4 different white people, or am I one person that applied to 4 different jobs?
Through the chair to the councilman, that is, so that is correct. So if you applied 4 different times, that means you applied 4 different times. So that's your percentage on how many times you applied.
Okay, so a lot of these could be people applying for multiple positions, trying to see what they can
Correct.
get. Okay, makes sense. Okay. And then I think also with the racial breakdown, it would be good to know of the people that made it through civil service and were eligible to those departments, what their racial demographic was, because we're starting at 57% African American. It would be good to know what percentage did 57% make it through to the eligible candidate pool. That would be good for us to know. But then I want to go back to the 1 in 10, because this is like, this is like the Rubik's Cube of City Hall hiring and trying to understand how to put this thing together. So I'm going to use Councilman Slife's example. Say we're hiring 30 firefighters, and we need 300 separate applicants to do 1 in 10, 30 times. My question is, do we send all, say we got 300, we clearly don't, but say we did. Would we send all groups of 1 in 10 simultaneously? So we took person number 1, 11, 21, 31, 41, 51, 61, 71, 81, and 91, and we grouped them together, and we said, here, get one of them. And then we put person number 2, 12, 24, 2, 12, 22, 32, you with me? As a group of 10, and sent them, and then we do that 30 times until all the candidates are exhausted? Or, okay, let me ask that. Is that how we do it? That's sort of like I suppose a yes or no, I guess.
Through the chair to councilman, we would send like 1 through whatever 200,
Whatever
I
the total
guess.
is.
We wouldn't do it that way.
I'm sorry?
Through the chair to council, we would send like 1 through 200. I don't even think the system could do that. We would send them in a batch. We wouldn't send them
And then
like that.
they pick 10 from a candidate pool, and they hire. So then that division then selects which 10 they're going to review for that hire?
Through the chair to council, that is correct. But on our end, like, we would have to chart it out, to go through to make sure that a group were not passed over incorrectly.
Okay. So,
On that point.
yeah, go ahead.
It's correct. It's 1 in 10, 7 reviews, right? Is that how it works?
After you get bumped 7 times, you're out.
No. Through the chair to council, it's 4. Through the chair to council, it's 4.
So it's 1 in 10, and
And
each candidate gets 4 reviews.
that is correct.
So you look at candidates 1 through 10. If you're candidate number 5 and you didn't get picked in one of the first 4 picks, that's when you get passed over. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
I can go get Post-it notes if I need to.
Right. So this is where we end up. Okay. But you don't send the batches of the 10 and say, here's 10. They've passed civil service. get one of those, and if you need more, come back to us and we'll give you another 10. You send everybody over, and that department or division works with you to put together a group of 10.
No.
I'm trying to figure out who puts the 10 together. If we're doing 1 and 10, who makes the 10?
So, well, I guess, are you speaking on safety or just in general?
We'll just stick with fire.
Okay, so it's different with safety, so,
I'm glad that it's
again-
confusing for you.
Well,
this
I
this
think
really
the
makes
question
me
is
happy.
confusing. I think sure. I think the question is confusing.
Oh, okay. That's entirely possible.
And that's why I was asking, are you looking at safety or are you, because it's a little bit complex with safety because it's usually a bigger amount of numbers.
Okay.
So let's take it out of safety and then maybe you can understand
sure.
safety. So in general, 10 names are sent for a position. The department has to review those 10 names and has to pick from those 10 names.
But do they pick which 10 go into the pool they're reviewing, or does civil service say pick from these 10?
Civil service provides the top 10 names.
Okay.
And they tell them to pick from those 10 names.
Okay.
So let's say in an example, if a position had a classification is used in multiple departments, and one department had already looked at 10 names and maybe had picked from them. So now we're going to get the list 1 through 11 because you need to add a person. So that 11th person will be added as part of that 10 names. But they have to look at those 10 candidates and pick from those 10 candidates before they can move on to get any. They won't get another set of 10 names.
Okay. So this is how high-scoring candidates end up getting passed over, because if they weren't picked out of the 10 4 times, then they're just sort of like bumped and, try again next year or whatever, even if they were like a high-scoring person. And so do we always start at the top and work our way down? Or do we sometimes just randomize the pool and
No,
say?
it's always from the top.
It's always from the top. So that's
Highest
specific.
scored.
Okay. So the system, Madam Chair, it sounds like the system, and maybe I'm being a little bit too judgmental, but it sounds like the system is designed in a way that is going to prevent high-scoring candidates from employment through the math alone. Through, you get 4 reviews and you can't all get in there. I mean, unless they took numbers. Well, no, even if they took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 would then get bumped because they would have been removed 4 times, right? So you lose a huge, 60% of your top score every time you go through 4 times. I mean, I guess it's not a question, so I'm not, but that sounds like the way it's sort of like designed right now. You're automatically going to lose a very high percentage of top scoring people because by the system itself, they cannot survive 4 passovers and still be in the candidate pool in a 1 in 10 system. So that would make some sense on why I hear from people that are like, I scored really high and just never got in. And I thought, I live in Cleveland. I'm a minority. I, don't have any problems on my record. And why didn't I get in? I'm like, I don't know. It makes no sense to me. You seem like the type of person I want to work for the city of Cleveland. It happens all the time. People come up to us and tell us this. And I'm scratching my head and wondering if there's something they're not telling me. But they score so high and then they're just not getting job opportunities. And it seems counterproductive for the city to pass over our people who meet so many of our goals as a city out of sheer, math. I mean, it's not even math. It's arbitrary enforcement of rules or arbitrary enforcement of a standard that specifically prevents high-performing people from being employed. That seems contrary to the goals of this city. It seems like it should be contrary. And 1 in 3 seems a lot more relatable then, because especially if it's 4 passovers and 1 in 3, and you were number 7 and you didn't get higher, there was some good reason that you got passed over that many times. Because in a 1 in 3 system, there would have been more opportunity or less opportunity for you to be passed over. Maybe I'm just talking out loud. I'm sorry, it's a confusing subject. I am talking out loud. Maybe I'm thinking out loud. It's a confusing subject, and it's hard to to wrap your head around. My only other question, Madam Chair.
Councilman?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm cool if you guys want to jump in. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. My only other two questions then, and I heard somebody address this earlier, and I apologize. I only caught part of the answer, but the department seems to be at 37% of expended budget, 3/4 of the way through the year. There's a huge unused portion over in contractual services where 9,000 is expended and 51,000 is encumbered, but that's still only 17%. I heard somebody addressing a contract with someone or other. Could y'all just, for humor me and remind me why that number is so low?
Thank you.
For 630 contractual services appropriation, we appropriated $600,000 and spent $62,000, just over 10%, leaving about $500,000 on the table for contractual services.
You got it, Director?
I thought I heard something about a recruiting partner, but maybe that wasn't in relation to this.
Through the chair to council, I'm sorry, where are you?
Page 20 of 179 in the budget that ran 10/6 at 9:04 a.m. If you're, it's this, and then the second page, it's section 630 contractual services.
Through the chair, I see it. I'm sorry, what was your question?
Why has only 10% of that been expended? We're 3/4 of the way through the year. We usually, in this process, I'm looking more for 75%.
Through the chair to council, as I stated, I arrived in July. I cannot answer that question.
Okay.
I can only move forward. A large part of this is NTN, which is our testing facility for Division of Police, psychological examinations. So I can't answer that question.
Well, I
but-
suppose if you're not hiring, you don't have to pay for a lot of psychological. Okay, never mind. I shouldn't say that. Okay. The last question then, and I apologize, I know you just started in July, but I'm asking everybody this. There is a proposal that would require us to set aside 2% of the general fund before we allocate any funds to any other departments in the city. And should that pass, the most even way to do it would be to cut every department 2%. So in terms of your own functioning, do you think there's a way to cut 2% without having any layoffs in the Division of Civil Service?
Through the chair to council, if I need to find 2%, then I will find 2%.
Got it. Okay. That's the only questions I have. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councilman Harsh. Next on my list, I have Councilwoman Gray.
Okay, thank you. I only have a couple questions. I know, but with all the questions that has been asked pertaining to the chair, to the director, pertaining to the test scores, is the highest test score 70% of when someone takes the civil service test? The highest, I'm just reading over some information, and it said to be added, it said the eligibility list, you need to score at least 70%. Is that a particular score of like, is it 100%, is 70% is like 100 to the test, or, you know, maybe like a range, like 70, you have to get 70% of the test, the answers question more so than under 70, you don't pass, but 70 and up, you do pass. Since all this came up with the questions with my colleagues, I just want to have an understanding, you know, what is the percentage of the testing to be passed? Chair to the director.
Through the chair, that is correct, 70%.
It's 70% and up, you have to have passed.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
and I want to agree with some of my colleagues that I do have quite a few of the constituents have called me or since I've been in the position, on how do they come in to apply for the civil service test and also to apply for position in HR. And I tell them that either they can go online or come here to HR to ask those questions, because I don't know the process of the procedure, how both of the departments partner with them applying. And Chair, to the Director, and one of the biggest questions is the knowledge. And I agree with some of my colleagues. If they don't understand the process to apply for the civil service, to get the job through HR, that's a barrier for them to understand how to pass the test. And I explained to them that you can ask either one of the departments per se, is there a pre-testing, like they can be pre-tested, or maybe like it's is there like what you got? I can't think of it. Just lost my concentration. You know how you test yourself, like you go to the library, and is there like a booklet at the library that they can go over and study and pre-test for whatever position that they are going to apply for, so they can be more knowledgeable to pass the test. So could someone, Chair, to whatever, someone can answer that question. Is there like a booklet that they can use to study prior to taking the civil service test to pass, to hopefully get hired through HR to get that position? Chair, to anyone on the panel?
Through the chair to Councilwoman Gray, we don't have a study guide. I feel like we may have many years ago, but we don't have
that
one
now?
No. Also, point of reference, that will be a task for our recruiter as far as branding, because they're, I just realized internally, a lot of people really don't know how to apply for positions. So, we would need to do, more community outreach, more internal communication so that they understand. But again, anyone, that needs assistance are welcome to come into HR or civil service. They can come into the office and we will assist them.
Okay, I think that, thank you, Chair, to the Director. I think that needs to be looked into, because there's a lot of residents that want to work here with the skill or the expertise that they have, and hearing what my colleagues have spoken on, that they know in themselves that they are qualified to do the job, but they just can't get past the civil service test. But since things have changed over time, and if they don't have the understanding of what has changed, even with the expertise that they have to give, and if they can't get past that civil service test and they fail it, and they know that they have the expertise to do the job, then something needs to, like you said, the outreach, come to the meetings or explain to the constituents what are the qualifications now for them to have to understand how to pass the civil service test, because I think most people do. I worked at the library for quite a while, and I know a lot of just people in general will come to the library, pull those pre-testing study skills book and learn from that, and then go and take the test. But if that's not available for them to have that source, for them to feel better that now they can go and pass this test, how would they know that they can pass the test if things have changed and they failed the test and they have the expertise to know they can do the work? So due to what you brought up, something needs to be set up in a structure where the constituents, when they come to do the test, they can have somewhere to know what has changed, to know what they need to look for, because I've just listened to my colleagues have very good questions and gave a lot of information. It says here that said the minimum 3 sections are verbal, math skills, and clerical. Is there others section to the test that people need to know what's on the civil service test, for them to pass?
Through the chair
To the
Councilwoman.
director.
That sounds like maybe one of the clerk, I would need to know which position it is.
Okay. It just said the 3 of the basic minimum 3 sections on a civil service test. But if there's other qualifications that the constituents need to know to understand, that they need to go back and study or be better prepared, because things have changed and they need to upgrade their skills or their expertise in order to get past the civil service to get that job. I think that needs to be acknowledged along the way, too, of the structure of what's going on now. Because I know quite a few of my constituents came up here and I told them, look on the board, either look on the board and then go to HR and ask questions, because that's not something that I'm much engaged in. So, thank you, Chair. That was the last
Thank you,
question.
Councilwoman. And on that point, do you guys have pre-tests for the civil tests? Kind of like college, right? You take a practice test. They don't have that in preparation. Okay. And I'm assuming that this recruiter position that's vacant will handle a lot of that recruitment and education and outreach piece of it, right? What's the timeline? Did you hire someone already and they're just, because I know you hired bilingual, but that's for the human resources side, not for civil.
Through the chair to council, they're actually going to work together. It is our hope that we can have them prior to the end of November, maybe mid-November, I would say.
Okay, so they'll be cross-trained to be able to handle. So the bilingual one essentially could do work in the civil service department. Okay, got it. Yes, go ahead.
Through the chair, and I know we've had a lengthy conversation. Thank you all so much for your patience. So one of the things, as you show the numbers, and I know there's a lot of emphasis that goes on within the hiring or lack thereof that may happen as people, perception-wise, in public safety. But if you look at the numbers, can you go back to the numbers of our hiring? You will see that public safety isn't too far out from just general Cleveland hiring at all, right? So 847 people out of 24,605. That's about 3.1%. I think that was my math. And then out of the 825, I think it's 23 or so. That's about no. The first one we had 3.1, and then that's about 2.7%, right? So we're about 0.04. 0.4 of a percentage off from one another. So, A, I want to put this in just context just for my colleagues. Two, I know that Department of Public Safety is going to work on preparing kind of like, I'm going to say after hiring report to civil service and HR. Can you all, is that something that you all are looking to, is to be able to highlight reasons that people aren't being hired for the city of Cleveland?
Through the chair to Councilwoman, one of the things we are looking at that is not really tracked is our employee turnover. Some formalized process that will tell us, why people are attriting out, what is the reason. So that is, part of our plan as well.
Yeah, just so the follow-up, so specifically on the hiring, because I think there is, as people are saying, well, we're getting all these people that are applying, then why aren't they getting hired? I really think we need to share this hypothetically, or if you just think about where we are, some of our skills gaps just in our region. I think that is a real challenge, as people have been talking about. But I think in order to solve a problem, we actually need to know what's going on. And so similarly, and that maybe this is something that you all should potentially work with the Department of Public Safety, because I know they are working on a process to be able to share the reasons why, in general, people are not being hired. That is something that I think collectively we as a city need to be able to address. Therefore, we will be able to help it. And I see it. I will tell you, there is a skill set, and I'm talking about a lot of the people that I have hired in years. These are people with college degrees, and I see the skills gaps with people with college degrees, like basic stuff, like don't know how to use a copy machine, don't know how to use spreadsheets. You would be very, very surprised. You see what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not being funny, but like, this is basic stuff, and you're like, why don't you know how to do this? They say you at a 3.5, and da, 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 where? And you cannot do this. So I think we really need to have a much more robust conversation about some of the mismatching of skills so that we can better align and help people to be prepared. Right, and like really, really be prepared, because it is something when people talk about the 1 in 10, I can guarantee you, as much as people want to complain about it, the diversity that we have, the force that we have in 2023 is very, we have made progress since 2013, hands down. And nobody, I'm like, well, where was all this complaining when we didn't have as much of a diversity? When you look at women, I'm not just talking about it, you can look at the actual numbers. So while some people it may be uncomfortable, just because you got a 98 or a 97 or a 95 on the test don't mean you're the best candidate. There are studies that show the people who are the 72s are just as good as a leader. But sometimes if you only do it in the rank order, they never get looked at. They never get looked at. So when you have systems like 1 in 10, it enables people who are qualified, but maybe you don't test well. You know what I'm saying? And there's a whole bunch of historical context to just think, just because you ranked whatever your number is, does not mean you are the best. And especially when you get into promotions and things of that nature, just because you are a good teacher don't mean you're a good principal. Okay? And these are the things that we actually need to start talking about in a very robust way. And like I said, there are studies that talk about a lot of times C's are better than A's, especially when it comes to management, because they got better people skills than A's. But that's neither here nor there. That's just some readings. But y'all, the HR professionals, will look to see what you all perform. So I just wanted to add that to the contest. But thank you so much, Madam
Thank you,
Chairwoman.
Councilwoman. So I guess going back to Councilman Harsh's request of numbers, I would be curious to see not only how many people have been passed over, but how many qualified and were passed over. Yeah, okay. So thank you. And so just to close this, I just have one budgetary item. Thank you to all my council colleagues for a great line of questions. Tuition and registration, is that only for your employees? This is not for public safety or other areas. It's simply for your department.
To Madam Chair, that is correct.
Got it, okay. And so they have tuition and registration here for $1,500, which they haven't spent. But the reason I was asking is because I get public safety, like some firefighters and policemen that are continuing education, and they're not being reimbursed for that. And I know that you and I can talk about that. So those tuition and continuing education expenses are per department line item. You are not handling, human resources not handling that reimbursement piece. Okay,
Correct.
just for that. And that's it. That is anything that you want to share as far as your budget items, Director?
Madam Chair, no.
No changes? Okay. Well, thank you. We will follow up with the meeting. I know this was a lot, and we still have some questions and so forth. But, maybe it'll be helpful for us to, visit the department. You could, kind of go through the whole process. I know it would be helpful for me. If some of my colleagues would like to attend, we could set that up. Brooke, maybe you could help with that. No.
No.
No, thank you. Thank you for your time. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
And this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
I don't take that for granted